Hi everyone, welcome to my sewing studio. I am Lisa, the owner and designer behind Pink Hollybush Patterns, a line of children's sewing patterns designed primarily for knits, but also for wovens sometimes too. And today I'm going to talk about a fun little pattern that we have, which is a series of fun pockets to go on any Pink Hollybush pattern or other pattern as well. So these are all animal themed pockets for children's patterns, and we have a lovely ladybug, a beautiful butterfly, a hopeful heart, and a timid turtle. Now, the pattern is available for sale on the Pink Hollybush website. I will put the link to that below. But today I'm going to show you how to make the timid turtle. I have him right here. And he is the most difficult of the 4 patterns. So if I show you how to do the turtle, you will be all set to do any of the patterns. So let's go over to my cutting table. We will get started and I will show you how to make this fun and cute little turtle that, as I said, can be a pocket on a children's garment. It can also be an applique either on that garment or on something, a blanket, whatever you would like to adorn. Pockets come in 2 different sizes, both geared for infants clothing all the way up to children's clothing and size 12. And except for our turtle, his pieces were getting a little too small to make it down in infant sizes, so he's in one size, but he can be a pocket. They all can be pockets, or it can also be an applique if you'd prefer to just attach it flat to, let's say, a baby blanket, for example. So let's go over to my cutting table. We'll get started and I'll show you how to make this little guy. Okay, so here is my turtle drawn on my base fabric. And the way I did this was I started out with the turtle piece that had the seam allowances on it, and I laid that down and I traced using my marking pen. I hope you can see that. It was hard to get anything to show up on this green fabric, but I traced my cutting line. Then I cut off the seam allowances and used the same pattern piece, laid it down, and I traced the stitching line. And the reason I did that was then I did the embroidery, and I wanted to make sure that I was starting actually in the seam allowance. So I've used 2 strands of just cotton floss, and I knotted. Oh, you probably can't see the knot, but I do have a knot. I came up in the seam allowance and then stitched up to where I wanted to stop. And using this same pattern piece, I marked right where I wanted to stop at each of those. I did the same thing for the mouth, and again, this is 2 strands of embroidery floss, and it's just a simple stem stitch, and there is a video in the sewing library showing you how to do that. So I started out here and just stitched in to do the little mouth. For the eye, I decided to try a granito because I'm always trying different things. I think in the pattern I sent a French knot. You could do a French knot if you want to try a granito, which is what I did here. It's just a straight stitch. You come up in the hole, you do a straight stitch, go down a little bit farther, and then you just keep coming up and down in the same holes, and you lean the thread to one side and to the other side as you go down, and it just kind of builds up, and I thought I like how it turned out, so I'm going to go with that. So here I've done, I've gotten that embroidery done. The next step is to put my spots on. So I'm going to show you the both methods of doing that. So first up, I'm going to show you the method without the seam allowances. So I took my spots and I cut them out without the seam allowances. And this is just Wonder Under, and I'm going to use that to draw my spots on. Now, if you remember, I mentioned in the pattern that you have to do a mirror image. So when you draw your spot, make sure to turn the pattern piece over, and then you can just draw it. It's not easy to do this when I'm doing it at an angle. Okay, so there's my spot, and this is actually number 2. I realized that the numbers on the turtle and the numbers of the spots are different. We'll have to fix that for you. But so I'm going to block fuse these, and the way I'm going to do that, I'm just following the directions on the Wonder Under. So I have my little iron here. Try to do this without getting in the way of the camera, which is always tricky. Okay, but I'm just gonna put that on the paper. And the reason you want to do it this way, and it's 3 seconds each. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. The reason you want to do it this way is that makes sure that Wonder Under goes right up to the edges and really secures it. Okay, so the directions on my Wonder Under say 3 seconds, but I found it took about 6. And now I'm just going to cut out my spots. So there's spots 1 through 4. I'm just going to peel off the paper, and yes, I got it started before I turned on the camera, and just get that one in, and I'm going to fuse these 5. So I've got a wet press cloth. That's what the Wonder Under says to do, and we're going to give it 10 seconds. Again, this is a hot iron with no steam in it, and that is what the directions said to do. And my fabric that I'm using for this is just quilting cotton. Okay, and there they are, all nice. We'll let them dry. You don't want to move it when it's still hot, because you can peel it off at that point. So you do want to let it dry. And I'm going to show you how the alternative method number 2 for doing the last spot. So I took spot number 6, and with the seam allowances, and I just traced it on the fabric, and then I cut away the seam allowances, so again I could trace the stitching line. So I have both the cutting line and the stitching line. So now I'm going to go ahead and just cut this piece out. I've pinned this in place. I have a betweens needle and just matching all-purpose thread. I've knotted my thread. I've come up just somewhere in the middle of where the spot will be, so my my knot is underneath there. I've clipped up to the stitching line, and then I've folded that edge under, and I've purposely started where it's straighter so I could get a good start. So you see that's folded underneath there. Now I'm gonna roll this, and you saw I had a finger shield on, and I'm rolling it over that. Now you don't have to use the finger shield, but the idea is to roll the fabric tightly over your finger, and then you're just gonna do tiny whip stitches through the base fabric and just come out. And you're probably, I'm gonna go like just about a 1/16 of an inch. I'm not quick at this. But this is the basis for Madeira Applique. Put my glasses on so you can see what I'm doing. And I'm just taking a tiny little bite, and you just move along. Like that. So I just want to show you how I'm going to turn this edge. I have not clipped anymore since I made my initial one, and the idea is only clip when absolutely necessary, but I have trimmed some of the seam allowance down a little bit, and that is, I'm about to turn this corner, and that's what I'm going to do. I'm just going to trim some of this off. While I'm there, I'm going to trim a little bit off there, that corner too. Okay. Also see I've lost my shield. I'm stabbing myself instead. All right. But what we're going to do, kind of right at the corner, use my needle and just stick it under. Take that next bite. And push it under over my finger. As I said, this is known as Madeira Applique. It is how the ladies do it to make the beautiful linens in Madeira, Portugal. And then after they did this, what they would do, this is how they would attach the pieces, and then they would go around and pin stitch them all in place. And I'm just going to finish up this little applique. So there are my completed spots. Now, the advantage of turning the edges under like I did here is it gives a neater appearance, and I feel like I could just leave that and go finish the rest of the turtle. On the spots where I use the Wonder Under, you'll see there's, you know, I have a few little whiskers. So I don't know how well that would do if I just left it like this, especially if, you know, this is on a garment that's going in the wash. But what I am going to do now is I'm going to embroider around these spots. So it's really a matter of what you would prefer to do. Now, if you use the knit, you definitely want to use the Wonder Under method, turning under these little seam allowances on a knit. It's just going to be too bulky, but you won't have, you know, any of the whiskers with the knit. So I'm going to go now embroider this, and I will show you the next step after that. So here's my turtle with the embroidery finished, and I hope you can see you really can't tell the difference between where I used the Wonder Under and where I didn't. And I think, you know, if you want to do the embroidery, if you would enjoy doing that, I don't know that I would bother turning the edges under. I would just use the Wonder Under. If you don't want to use the embroidery, I would go ahead and turn those little edges under. So now that I've got all my embroidery done, all the embellishment pieces are on, I'm now going to cut out both turtles, put the right sides together and sew them together on the sewing machine. And I will be back in a minute to show you a finished turtle. So here is my finished turtle. I did decide to go ahead and add some stem stitch just to define the shell a little bit better. At this point, he is all set to go, and I can attach him to whatever garment or blanket or whatever I want to attach him to. If you want them to be a pocket rather than an applique, when you attach them, there are marks on the pattern here and here, and you would leave that open. So you would just edge stitch around the rest, and then there's a little pocket there. If you want them to be an applique, you go around the entire edge. So that is how you would do the turtle pocket or applique. Happy stitching!